let's do some introductions. So Jack, this is Katie. Katie, this is Jack. We're going to be
Okay,
talking to
nice
Jack.
to meet
Hi, good
you.
morning.
We're going to be talking to Jack today about his life and where he's going with it, because he's got a really interesting background, been through an awful lot. Okay, so you put out this video. There's pictures of you standing in front of the sumac bush, I think.
Okay, yeah.
And it's
Today's
just
video.
oh, is it today? Okay, so it's a series of images of Jack standing by his bush where he does his foraging for plants and herbal medicines and things like that. So, but he's standing here, and in this video, he's basically saying, "I'm here to help. I love you all. You guys are awesome. I'm your biggest supporter." And coming from where you've been, Jack, and we had a discussion the other day about the things that you've been through, including trying to, and I have to word this sensibly because otherwise we might get blocked on TikTok, but you actually tried to leave planet Earth by your own hand in a big
Yes, I
way,
did.
in a big way. And yet you're still here wanting to love other human beings. So tell me a little bit about your story, and maybe, because Katie doesn't know much about it, start from the beginning and tell us a little bit about what you've been through and what happened first.
From the very beginning.
Yeah, we'll start at the beginning. We may as well,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up in a place called Berkshire. I actually came from a fairly good background of people within my life. And unfortunately, my mother and father split up when I was younger at an age of 3.
Mm-hmm.
I used to visit my dad on the weekends. He used to come and pick me up. And my mum met another man, which would have been my stepdad, who she ended up marrying. I actually went to school with his children. And I believe that the relationship between my stepdad and his previous partner broke down due to different reasons within the children and the partner. So my mum ended up being with this man, and that was when my life kind of turned upside down, and I started to witness abuse within the man and my mother, which then led on to me becoming very unsettled. At a young age, I was also diagnosed with ADHD and Autism. So as you can imagine, seeing certain things going on in my home growing up as a young child made me become very unsettled.
So that could
So
have
I
been
used to visit.
problematic for your parents, obviously, because when we become unsettled, we behave erratically, right? Even as children, or can do.
Absolutely. And I started to become quite uncontrollable. And I could never stop, if you understand. My energy levels were through the roof, and my behavior was deteriorating. And that was when I started to realize that my father, who I was visiting on the weekends, was actually taking substances around me, which I believed later on, after a few more years, influenced me into trying them to try and soothe and make myself feel better. So from taking them substances when I was younger, now I look at the bigger picture. I believe because I was young and I didn't have no money and I had to take these things from my father and he wasn't looking, which I should never have done. I couldn't afford them when I was at home with my mum, which then led me into a life of crime to fund this habit and make myself feel better and calmer and cover up my emotions and feelings, I guess.
Yeah, and
That's how I'd explain it now I'm older.
you got into some really big problems, didn't you, though?
I did, yeah. So leading a life of crime, from petty crime up to organised crime, over the years it just got worse and worse and worse. And I ended up being charged with an armed robbery in the end, and possession of a firearm. And I was remanded to prison and sentenced to 10 years. from the age of 13 to the age of 18, but they actually couldn't send me straight to prison. So they had to send me to a secure unit first, which was called Vinnie Green in Bristol.
Mm-hmm.
They actually then moved me to a more rural location in the countryside with a lot more leeway, which was less secure up until I was 15. And then they took me to Ashfield YY prison. And the best way to explain the place after they sent me from the secure unit to the next place is it was more of a secure care home rather than a secure kind of prison establishment for young children.
How did that affect your mental health, do you think? Because I think for me, I'm trying to think how it would feel for me being with nobody I knew and stuck in a care system when I think you needed somebody to understand you, right? Rather than throw you from one care system to another.
My parents didn't really understand. Well, my mum, took me to my CAMHS appointments and things like that. And I think where I was so young, so much was going on in my life and her life with the stepfather. I believe the focus was more on that rather than myself. So I was left to run astray. The mental health effect, at the time, I didn't realise what was going on or understand what was going on. I was just like out of control. So I would say that I've faced them mental health problems later on in life now and understand it now rather than when I was younger.
Of course.
Because I was a lost cause, basically. I was uncontrollable. Like, there was no stopping me. I wouldn't listen to anybody. I was just in my own lane.
Yeah. I don't think you was a lost cause. I think you was more a lost soul. I think that's probably a nicer way to put it.
Yeah, okay. That may be a better way to explain it. Yeah, lost soul. Yeah.
Because if you was a lost cause, you wouldn't be doing all the wonderful stuff you're doing now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You was just off the path for a while.
And yeah, I think the mental health part of it. So being locked up as a young child in these places, it was very lonely. My family abandoned me, didn't want to know me from a very young age. Nobody came and visited me. Nobody spoke to me. And then obviously when I went to prison, I was growing up a bit more, getting older. I was then again still left and abandoned. I didn't receive any letters from my family. Nobody came to see me. Nobody sent me any money to help me whilst I was there to even make phone calls. So I ended up getting an actual job in the prison as a painter and decorator. That kept me quite busy for some time. But as you know, going into prison with young offenders can be quite a dangerous place, and things can happen. So things did happen, and that resulted me into going into the block of HMP YY at Ashfield, where I spent around 4 months, I think it was, which sent me insane.
So when you say the block, Jack, what exactly is that? Is that like a solitary confinement or something? Or?
Yeah, solitary confinement, 23-hour bang up every single day. You're allowed out for 1 hour a day, and that's to get a shower and exercise. No TV, no radio, no nothing. Just literally a book I had, that was all.
Holy
and a window
moly.
to look out of.
Yeah, it would have made you really lonely. Katie, what are your thoughts on how the human mind behaves when you're isolated like that? I mean, have you got any thoughts on that?
I think Jack said it beautifully, that, you were put into a place like that. So not only were you alone as a child, but you felt like your family had abandoned you in more ways than one, I'm sure. And so to have got you to a place like that, what's happened is that you've been abandoned over and over many times before that point, before you even started to get into drugs and crime and things. You speak about the divorce when you were 3, and then everything seems to escalate until a point where you're put into a place like this. You've already been abandoned over and over, and then you're isolated and confronted with everything that's going on in your mind. So not only will everything kind of build up and come to the forefront because you've literally got nothing else to do. You've said for an hour a day you got to do things, and everything, I assume the rest of that time was just you and nothing much else, right?
Yeah, so the rest of the time was just me and four walls in a very small cell.
Right.
And a lot of people shouting and banging their doors and kicking off, obviously,
Yeah.
for being locked up down the block. It's
Did you find
young
that in that
age.
time? Sorry, start your thought
Yes.
again, Jack.
Yeah, sorry, yes, yeah, being such a young age down, down the block and inside prison, and having your childhood taken away from you causes a lot of anger.
Yeah.
But again, I accept all responsibility for my actions. I just understand myself and what it's caused me later on in life now within my mental health from being locked up in these places and committing these things and doing these crimes and losing people and suffering with the regret because we only have one life, right?
True. And a lot of people who've been through a hell of a lot of trauma, Jack, they tend to say, I know I was a terrible person, or I know that I played out and I did all of these things. And a lot of this is, I can see why this has all happened. But if we take it back to earlier than that, I mean, not to kind of take all of that onus on you because yes, you were the person that did those things, but it's why we did those things and what brought us to that place. So
Yeah.
do you really think that you were given the tools and the ability and the support and the love to be able to live a normal life where you weren't taking drugs, you weren't into crime? Do you think you were given those tools?
So yeah, like I say, when I was growing up before this all started, I remember, and a lot of people would agree, even my mother, even though we don't speak and haven't done for 10 years, I was such a loving, caring young man. And although I was suffering with ADHD and autism, I had so much compassion and love within my heart. And
That's really important. That thought is that as a
that was
normal
taken
child,
away from me as soon as the stepfather came into my life. And
yeah,
my behavior and the things I see made my life deteriorate very quickly. And I became a very unsettled, traumatized child.
there's the change. And that's what I wanted to look at with regards to that self judgment there with, I know I was a bad person. I know I did these things. But you've just described that change where you were a loving, beautiful, incredible child, and then you weren't given the support. All of these things were taken away. Your family life was uprooted, and you were destabilized completely. Of course, then you're going to start to go into these places where you're trying to self-regulate. You're trying to help yourself with some sort of control over what's going on in your life, and that's where things start to escalate. So, if I were to ask you the same question again, do you think that these things were your fault, looking at it in that way?
I think committing the crimes were my fault, but for all of this to have happened, I don't think it was my fault. No, I think I was a very confused young child, and I didn't understand, and neither did I understand, the ADHD and autism. All I know is I become very unsettled when that man came into my life and my mother's life, and from what I see him put her through and myself. I don't think it's my fault at all, but I do take responsibility for my actions.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Within the crime and criminal world, I take full
absolutely. But what we see is that the way in which you were brought up and the way in which you were supported as a child has led you to certain things and certain destructive things that went on in your life that really, had you received that supportive upbringing, and when your parents divorced and then when your mother met someone else, had you had somebody that said, are you okay? Are you coping with this? How are you? Do you think that would have changed the way that your trajectory of your life went?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had my auntie and uncle try and help me. But unfortunately, my actions broke that down. So I did have people within the family there what did try,
Yeah.
but I think I was just too far gone in my mind, and out of control. And I just didn't want to listen to anybody. So I did have my auntie and uncle there who tried their hardest to help. And I also had my nan and granddad there who tried very hard too. And actual fact, my nan actually picked me up from the prison when I came out when I was 18. She didn't visit me, but she did pick me up from the prison and be a part of my life when I came out, and done amazing things for me, as well as my granddad.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm curious because obviously listening to what you're saying, I know from some of the videos I've watched with you that you don't really have any interaction with your family now, and I know that there's been a lot going on, and they've gone through a lot with you. But I'm curious as to why there's still no connection now, despite the fact that you've turned your life around and you're no longer in prison. And is that your choice, or do you think theirs, or a bit of both?
I'm still the same person,
right?
And not only that, my mum is a drinker, and so is my stepdad. And I've tried to rebuild a relationship with them when I was with my baby mum. Mm-hmm. And I just felt no connection and quite embarrassed to be around them with their behaviour and how they acted at the restaurant when we would meet. And not only, so we can go a bit further into that actually when we get on to the next part, because my mum said some not very nice things, you know, as you're aware of. In 2020, I tried to do what I did and ended up at the bottom of a motorway bridge.
Let's go through that a little bit, Jack. Let's talk about that now, because we're already at that point, so we might as well talk about that. Walk us through what happened to get you to that point of using a bridge as a way out, because Katie doesn't really know your story. So
when I actually left prison, I actually went to sea and worked as a commercial fisherman, and that took my mind off of things and gave me a way of life. I earned very good money, and I used to have a drink here and there, and it was great. My life was going absolutely fantastic. I met a lady called Emily, and ended up having 2 children with her. And unfortunately, after quite a few years, that relationship broke down. Because I persisted to carry on taking substances, not bad substances, but the garden stuff. And where she was now a mum, she didn't do it anymore. And she felt that I needed to grow up and stop doing that, but I never done that. So that broke down. And then I think my life then became, again, I felt maybe abandoned and lost, and I would use certain things to make myself feel better. And it was a struggle. It was tough. I love my children. I come from a broken home. I never wanted that for my children.
When you say you used to use stuff, you're talking about pharmaceutical stuff now, are we? And I mean, I'm talking about hard pharmaceutical stuff that you can.
Pharmaceutical stuff. Yes, and then there was a point I got to, and I would just wake up and drink, and I didn't have a job. And I would just keep drinking and drinking throughout the day and then go to sleep. Or I'd sleep all day and drink all night. And my mental health was just deteriorating day by day, month by month. And it just got to a point where I just had enough.
So at this point you were drinking a lot, and you'd lost your children and your partner.
I'd lost my children,
didn't have your family. You didn't have your family around.
Didn't have no family. Didn't have. I had a few friends, but I wouldn't say the best of friends. And just before that as well, my friend who was a fisherman, actually, God bless his soul, lost his life in a car crash with another friend of mine, who actually gave me a call 10 minutes before that to pick me up, and I could have been in that car too. But God bless his soul, his name's JJ. So I had a lot going on. I'd lost my children, I'd lost my best friend, I'd lost my love of my life. And again, Emily, I grew up going to Hayling Island all of my life, and she was like a childhood sweetheart, if I could say anything. So yeah, we got to a point in life where I was just drinking. I'd become an alcoholic to soothe my pain and my feelings and everything that I've gone through, which isn't the way out. If anyone's watching this, it doesn't help you.
No.
It just helps you to feel better for that moment, but the next day it's gonna come crashing down. And it was just a vicious circle for quite a few months, until the point in my mind was telling me, that's it, just give up, there's nothing left for me here in this world. And that was the moment I would wake up, go and get drink, and then go to the bridge. And now I'd done that for 6 days in a row, and I would say that was for a cry for help. So on the 3rd day of doing it, instead of helping me, they chose to arrest me for being a public nuisance and causing a danger to a highway. And they would arrest me and take me to the police station.
Jeez.
Which then I was suffering with my mental health. I was withdrawing from alcohol, and then I was being put in trouble, you know, for being unwell and suffering with mental health and trying to get help. So I'd done that for the next 3 days, and each day they arrested me and kept me in overnight and released me every morning. So it was the 6th day, 6th night, they released me. I went home, went to sleep, and I woke up in the morning, and I remember waking up, and I just didn't feel the same person that morning. The day before, I had a vision. I had my mind. I was in my body. You know, I knew kind of what I was doing. I just knew that I was hurting and I was down and low and not very happy. But this one morning, I felt like my soul, my mind and my heart and all my feelings and emotion had left my body. I didn't even feel human anymore. And I opened my door and nothing seemed real. I didn't seem real, neither did the buildings. I remember shutting my door, locking my door, and going towards the area and location of the bridge in Hampshire, just off of Waterlooville, off the crossing from Waterlooville to Havant on the A3. On the way, I stopped at the shops and got myself 4 beers. I drank the 4 beers on the way there. I made a phone call to my mother and said what I was going to do. I got to the bridge, and instead of calling 999 or just standing on the bridge waiting for somebody to help me, the unexplainable happened, and I took that step over the edge, which resulted in me in hitting the floor.
Can I just quickly ask you a question before you go on? So when you stood on the top of the bridge, what went through your mind as you stepped off?
What went through my mind?
Was there regret?
I would just said goodbye to my mum and put the phone down. And if I'm totally honest with you, in my mind, what was going through my mind was that was it. There wasn't anything really going through my mind. That was it. It was the end.
I'm done.
It was nothing. There was no feeling. There wasn't even the feeling I was getting when I was going to the bridge. As the first 6 days I was going to the bridge, when I was on the edge of it, I actually felt kind of an adrenaline rush. That am I actually going to do this, or am I just going to wait here and try and get help?
Right.
So my heart would actually kind of beat faster. On the day I actually done it, there was nothing. There was no feeling. It was just commitment. I was going to do it.
Wow. Katie, what's your thoughts on that? Because that's like massive for me. I can't even get my head around the kind of pain you must be in to want to. I mean, we know my grandparent did that and her sister. So I understand that kind of feeling to watch something like that happening. I get the kind of situations you need to be in, but to actually be the person doing it, what are your thoughts on that?
My heart goes out to you, Jack. I just can see the little boy that started this life and was so beautiful and incredible and loving and giving. And then, because I wanted to just go back a little bit, because what I'm hearing from your story is that you went through so much. So, you talked about abuse and violence, right? And substance misuse and neglect and so many other things, if that's all you've told us about in this space of time. And you never received any support for that whatsoever. And what that does to a child, when a child is left with the pain of trauma and not given any support to deal with that, then the trauma damages them. Then they start to internalize stuff and they start to blame themselves and judge themselves and think, well, I must be a terrible person. It must be me that's doing this. I must be awful. Why don't they love me? Why don't they? Because no one's telling you any different. So a natural response for a child is to internalize all of that and blame themselves. And then we look outwards to the world and be like, right, well, if no one gives fuck about me, then what am I going to do? So then that's what you start doing. And you talked about your aunt and your uncle and your grandparents trying to help, but by that point you felt like just all of this stuff was too much, and just you were too far gone by that point. But you were never given any support through all of that, and then starting to drink and drugs and then the crime and things. And that continued. And you said kind of in your early 20s that, you were okay. You were coping. Things were okay-ish and you were living your life. And then what happened is you lost your friend, you lost your children, you lost the love of your life. And this is what happens when we've been through so much trauma in our past. We push it all down until we can't push it down anymore. And things like that happen, like normal life things. So, you went to prison and you lost your friend and you lost the love of your life and your children, and it all becomes too much and we hit this wall and we can't go any further, and our body goes, I can't do this anymore. And so I am absolutely not surprised that you got to the point that you did, like so many other people do. And you really described beautifully, if not painfully beautifully, what derealization looks like as well in those 6 days before you did that everything just didn't seem real. Everything had left your body. All of your feelings had left your body. All of this stuff was just, nothing seemed real. And then you gained this clarity just before. And then that's when you decided to do that. And it just, when we look at it like that, my heart just looks at little Jack and goes, why did no one help him when he needed help back then? And I just, that's what happens when adults or when children are left with this kind of trauma and they cannot process it. They don't know what to do. And then it just continues and continues until you get to the point that you do. And I totally understand.
So I also have a little connection that I made when Jack was talking, and I wanted to put this to you, Katie. So Jack says he comes from a great background initially and the family was lovely and et cetera, right? But then you say about mum drinks and the partner drinks as well. I think you might have mentioned. Now,
Yes.
because I come from a family where my dad was an alcoholic, my mum had pockets of binge drinking. I understand alcoholism. I also understand that alcoholism doesn't come from you wanting to be drunk all the time. It generally comes from wanting to cover something up, right? So my connection here is I'm saying to you, okay, your parents are a drinker. Why are they drinking? Maybe there's something in their background you don't understand, and that's why they couldn't support you in the ways that you needed. What do you think, Katie? Yeah?
100%. And Jack's agreeing with that. You could, you could probably, I'd put my money on it that, again, the people that drink in your life that were parents or caregivers, they went through all of their own trauma. They went through all of their own stuff. And that's not for us to go, okay, well, that makes it better then, because it absolutely doesn't. But they have been through their own stuff and they're coping using alcohol and drugs and the ways that they lived their life, the way that they parented you, Jack. They were trying to cope themselves and to stop themselves getting to that point that you got to. And that's the only way that they found that they can deal with that. So it absolutely doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does explain it. Yeah. So does that resonate with you, Jack?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, with what you're saying, definitely does. And I know my mum's passed with her own mother. and they've never had a relationship between themselves.
Right.
So it definitely does resonate to me. And I can see what's happened with my mum, and her mum's happened with me and my older brother, and then me and my mum. So it's all the same. All the relationships have broken down between my mum and her mum, my mum and her other son, and me. So, which is my brother. So all the relationships were broken, other than the relationship she had with my stepfather.
Right. So, and are there patterns in the way that you were parented by your mother, like in the way that her mother used to speak to her and tell her to deal with her stuff? Like,
yeah, so I can't actually comment on that because I was never allowed to know or meet her mother.
Right. And that says a lot in itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's part of her family I have never met who are aware of me and have met me when I was younger as a baby, but I've been kept well away from them, and I don't even know who some of them even are.
Wow.
And so as a child, because children naturally have needs, they naturally have emotions, they go through things, they need their parents. So when you went to your mother and said, or were upset or had a problem, how was that met? What did she tell you to, what did that look like for you?
So after becoming very disorientated and uncontrollable at a young age of, around 10 years old, I remember being about maybe 12, and my stepdad actually threw me out of the house, maybe just after I was 12. And he threw me out of the house, and I went back later that evening to go home, and my mum wouldn't even come to the door, and he just snatched my phone out of my hands and threw it over the flats. And I haven't seen my mum pretty much, until I grew up and come out of prison and had children, and that was the first time I met my mum. So I came out in 2010, and then I had my little boy in 2011. So I must have seen my mum about a year later, after being in prison. But then since then, I haven't seen her for 13 years now.
So would it be fair to say that kind of treatment, that kind of just trying to get rid of the problem, was the way in which your needs or emotions were met even before that stage, before being 10? We're talking 4, 5, 6.
I think so. I don't really understand that. What do you mean by that?
When you had a need when you were a child, or you had any emotions as a child, as a young child now, when you went to your parents with those emotions and needs, how would they meet you? Would they kind of dismiss you? Would they tell you off?
Yeah. So when I was a lot younger, before all of this started, obviously I was still a little bit disorientated, having ADHD and autism, but I was controllable. And I was loving, as I say, and my mum was there and loved me. And, my dad was a good person, always there for me. And my nan and granddad, and pretty much all of my family, my uncles, my cousins. It was a very, very, touching, amazing. It was just like a normal family, if anything. That's the best way to explain it. It was just later on that, not only the relationship between myself, my mother, and my stepdad broke down. It's many different relationships within the family broke down, not just mine. So, for instance, my father and his brother, they haven't spoken for years over certain things. So it's not just my relationship in the family what's broken down. There's many different relationships between my family what have later on broken down.
So that sounds to me like there's something massive gone on in the family, and you're effectively part of the fallout, and none of it's your fault. It's probably a family issue that's been so massive that everybody's fell out over it, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could definitely explain why. And it's because, again, like I say, I come from a very good family, and everything comes back down to money and being very money orientated. And that's why the relationships broke down between my father and his brother and certain individuals within my family over money.
Okay, so let's go back to the bridge, and you're standing on top of the bridge, and your mind's pretty much a blank at this point, and you step off.
Yes.
What happened after that point? What do you remember after that point? Because there must have been someone that saw you, or...
Yeah, of course. So the traffic was flowing, and I went into the lay-by. So I remember, the only thing I remember taking a step, and then the next moment I remember is the air ambulance hovering above me, not the actual helicopter, the people, and fitting things and putting things in my arms. And I do know what they put into me, but I better not say it because where this is going, but they put something into me to make
a painkiller,
me painless.
Okay. So that'll be the big M, probably.
I don't remember anything from that moment until I woke up 3 months later after being in ICU.
Crikey. So did they have you in an induced coma or something? Or...
Yes, yeah, they put me into a coma, into ICU for 3 months.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. And when you woke up, what were your what happened? You know, what went through your mind?
When I woke up, I was in a lot of pain.
I can imagine.
And I remember calling the nurse, and they came and again gave me stuff for the pain. And it took quite a long time, several weeks, for me to even, like, you know, deal with the pain and be aware of what was happening. But when I did finally come around, obviously I noticed that my legs had bars in, my feet had been, you know, operated on. And yeah, both my legs were broken, my femurs, both of my feet. My left foot must have hit the floor first because my left foot, inside, there was literally nothing left. It was all broken, every single part of it. And I broke part of my back and fractured my T12 wedge fracture in my spine.
Yikes. Which
resulted me, obviously, once I could get out of the hospital, be in a wheelchair to be able to move, and I was told that I'd never walk again.
Geez, that must have been quite a big thing as well, being told you'll never walk again. I don't know. I mean, Katie's quite the expert on the things that trauma causes in the brain. So what are your thoughts on that? What sort of help should Jack have been given at that point, do you think, for instance, maybe by the hospital or social services? Or...
Yeah. I mean, were you offered anything, Jack, after that, when you woke up in those months following?
Yeah, so my friend actually works within the mental health industry, and she said that I should have been sectioned under a certain section. It carries a certain section when you do that kind of thing.
Yeah, it normally does.
But the problem is before I done it and after I done it, the services were still saying that it's behavioural. So all of the things that I do, and anytime I suffer with mental health, the mental health services say that it's behavioural and they won't help me. So I'm left, basically. They blame it on behavioural. But again, how can it be behavioural? Because somebody with behaviour problems doesn't just go and do that kind of thing.
No,
they would do something else, right?
Are they saying behavioural with regards to the neurodivergence, the ADHD?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to say at this point that's rather convenient. Like, people who have got neurodivergence, who are neurodivergent people, when they experience any kind of trauma, it is so much bigger for a neurodivergent person, and they end up with PTSD much easier than other people. They end up having real problems after trauma in a much more blown out way than someone who's neurotypical would. So there's that for a start. But then what nobody has done, it seems, is no one's looked at your life as an overview and gone, what's happened throughout your life? How have you been, you know, what's happened in your early years, your teenage years, and looked at it all completely and gone, okay, your life has just been one long traumatic journey, and including the self-harm, and then, you know, wanting to get off the planet. So that in itself is a giant trauma, let alone everything else that came before. So really, yes, you should have had some very intensive therapy, some trauma therapy, and then also some help with regards to your neurodivergence and how that plays out with trauma, and helping you to really start to process the stuff. I mean, was any of that even given to you? Were you given any sort of mental health worker support, input?
No, I wasn't. And the biggest thing what plays on my mind on that is because obviously I was diagnosed at a young age with ADHD and autism. I used to have to go to CAMS every single week in a place called Berkshire, Bracknell, where I grew up. And that would have been on the system and logged, you know, and I'd done that for quite some years. And when I'd done all the things that I'd done, tried to get the help, and even to this day now, everything's disappeared. They can't find it. And now I'm on a waiting list of 5 years to try and get help with my autism and ADHD. And I have to wait 5 years as an adult to get any kind of help or support because they can't, apparently they can't find no evidence that I've even got ADHD or autism.
Oh my gosh. And I'm so sorry about that. And that's awful that process has happened, but it's a really common feedback that we get, that, you know, that happens so much, and that the records just aren't there, or the support just isn't there, or, you know, and all of that stuff. And it's common for people to experience that kind of process, and they're just not heard, they're not recorded, they're not given the right support, or the person didn't call them, or no one followed up, or it just, nothing happened. And it's just awful.
So that happened. And then, when I was released after being in hospital for a whole year, obviously I couldn't return home. So I went to stay in a hotel. And obviously I was in a wheelchair, so things were difficult. The only support that I was actually offered was people to bring me meals each day, which was absolutely fantastic, and I'm very grateful for that. But other than that, there wasn't no mental health support whatsoever. I was given a care coordinator or care worker lady who was very helpful. She started to come and see me, but nothing about mental health or anything like that. It was more of my general well-being and care after the incident of what had happened, making sure that, you know, I could, you know, I
your
was
physical
washing
needs
myself or eating and making sure that, you know, I wasn't just in a wheelchair stuck and abandoned. So I'm very grateful for what I was given, but I was never given any kind of help. So that led on to me starting to drink again, kind of thing.
I'm not surprised.
And because I was on a lot of prescriptions for the pain, I kind of was put on a tablet called codeine, which, as we all know, is quite addictive. And with alcohol and codeine isn't a great mix. So I actually ended up taking a bit too much one night and going to hospital again, which then led them, because I was in a different area, to actually trying to help me. So they actually did then try and help me and put me in another psych unit in the wheelchair, where I spent quite a few weeks. But again, whilst I was there, I wasn't given any help or any support. I was just told when to come and get medication and when to come and get lunch and dinner.
Jack, sorry to stop you there, Jack. Like, a lot of people that are listening to this, they're going to be like, so he was put in a psych ward and then wasn't given any support. What? My mind is kind of like, what do you mean? Like, did you not receive any psychological support, any therapy, any talking? Did you not receive anything whilst you were in there at all?
So
just
no
drugs?
groups at all on talking about anything what had even happened. And obviously they were aware because I was in a wheelchair, and all bars out of my legs and casts and stuff. All I was offered whilst I was there was medication, lunch and dinner and breakfast, and to go to the art room. That was it. There was no talking, no therapy, no. Oh yeah, and the ward rounds. That's it. And talking about medication, and that was it. And actually, they actually put me back on my ADHD tablets whilst I was there, and I became and felt amazing again.
Good. How are
And
you
I
feeling
just,
in your body right now? Are you okay?
yeah, I'm feeling good. Do you know what? All I want
Okay.
is this to help one person, or as long as it helps one
Jack.
person, that's all that matters. And whilst I was there, and feeling good again, I actually met a woman there called Catherine Robinson from Woking, and she was absolutely amazing. I was starstruck when I first met her, and she used to sit opposite me, and we used to talk, and then she used to come and sit with me after a day or two. And we got talking, and she told me a few pieces about her life, and I explained what had happened to me. And again, she had an alcohol problem, and that was why she was there, to try and cover up some feelings and things that she had been through in her life. But again, the alcohol is not the solution, and it just deteriorates and makes things worse and depresses you, into a lower and deeper form of depression. It doesn't do you any favors. It just soothes the moment until you have got another drink or a mouthful left. And then it becomes reality again, and it hits you, and it's like crashing into a wall again, unless you have another drink. So me and Catherine actually became very, very, very close. And it come to a point that she had to leave and go back home. She was a mother to 2 children. So she went home, back to her children after collecting them from her mother's. And she would visit me on a daily basis and, come and talk to me, take me out and help me with anything or bring me anything that I needed. And a few weeks went past and it was my turn to leave. So I left and went to stay in a travel lodge in Woking. And that was when me and Catherine made the decision to get into a relationship, because we had a very close connection and we felt something between us. So we got into a relationship. Everything was going very well. She was still having a drink, but not as often. And she told me a little bit more about her life, and it was quite shocking. Pieces that she didn't tell me in the unit. I won't go into them things on this podcast, but what I will say is she had her own battle, and unfortunately she lost that battle, and she is no longer with us. And she, God bless her soul, isn't here no more.
So she actually managed to do. Yeah, I'm very sorry to hear that. She actually managed to do what you almost did to yourself then.
Yes. She's no longer here with us.
God, that's awful. Poor girl. I wonder what was going through her mind. I don't know how.
Yeah, I'll never be able to tell you what was going through her soul because she never told me. And the only message I've got from Catherine, and I've still got it to this day, her last message was, "Am I okay?" That is the last message that I got from Catherine.
Am I okay? Is that what she asked?
Am I okay?
Oh, are you okay?
If I'm okay.
Wow. So her last message to you was asking if you were okay before she went and did something terrible to herself.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to think what would be going through someone's mind like that. I don't know if you know, Jack, but my grandmother did the same thing years and years ago in a gas oven. Sometimes I think to myself, what must be going on in your mind for you to be able to stay there? Because doing it in a gas oven is not an easy feat. You'd have to lay there for a certain amount of time. Do you know what I mean? And this is what fascinated me when I spoke to you and you said that you'd, I saw online that you'd done something like that or you'd spoken about it, and I was like, what goes through someone's mind that actually makes them want to do that? They get to the point that they do that, and you were so disconnected that you did that. I wonder if my grandmother was the same.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was what I was going to say. Is I think for myself, I'm going through that. I think the mind just becomes blank, and you actually, don't have any feeling anymore. And you take that step too far. But if you are watching this and you are feeling that way, I do, recommend that you get help very, very quickly and don't take that step. And, anybody here is here to listen and would, happily let you reach out to them, and they would be here to support you, because my shoulder's here for you to lean on anytime.
Absolutely. I think that goes for all three of us. If you are watching this podcast at the moment and you do have problems and you really feel like you're going to do something drastic like that, reach out to someone, anyone, it doesn't matter, a stranger, a doctor, a mental health professional, a friend, a family member, anybody. Just reach out to anybody before doing something drastic like that.
Literally, a stranger could be enough. Literally, you just don't know who you're going to say and open up to. And to be honest with you, I think a stranger would be better than most sometimes, as long as they're there to listen, which I'm sure somebody will be there to listen to you.
I agree, because I was in dire need. I'd hit a brick wall like you, and I was at a point where I was like, I don't know where else to go. There's no place for me here on planet Earth. And then I bumped into Katie. And Katie has turned my life around in the space of about 6 months or so, I think, over the time we've been talking. And I've gone from feeling like a less than worthwhile human to someone who's now starting a podcast to try and help others and speaking to people like you. So it's possible.
Amazing. I love that.
Yes.
It's the really important. What you never expect, and the people you don't expect to meet. They're the moments, I believe, and it's and that's what I love about TikTok and social media, is you never know who you're going to meet, and it's a phenomenal place. It can be a great place and it can be a bad place. I'm very fortunate that I've landed in a good place now, but I have had some bad times.
But actually, that leads me on to something that you'd be interested in talking about, Katie. I'm a great believer in that. The energy that you put out is the energy you get back. So, for instance, your growing up years when you've had all the trouble and there's been a lot of negative energy or negative stuff going on around you, it led you down a negative path. And the minute you woke up and you've now chosen a different path, you're full of love and people surrounding you to want to help you and support you. I think that's a really good point. And Katie's really into spiritualism and energy and that sort of thing. What are your thoughts on that and in going forward?
Jack, this is why I called my business what I called it, a pure soul, and it's for people like you. A pure soul is somebody who goes through so much darkness, who then not only walks out of that darkness and into the light, they then turn around and they help others to walk out of their darkness too. And so when you have gone through such huge levels of trauma and such awful things within your life, it doesn't destroy you. You allow it to heal you, you allow it to then heal other people, and it becomes this beautiful transmutation of energy where it's come from something so negative and so dark, and you've turned it into something so beautiful and incredible, and you're putting that out into the world to then bring people into this space that you're in, and what you're doing is just incredible.
Thank you.
I agree. He's also, I don't know if you know, Katie, that he's actually trying to help people with their health as well. So Jack does a lot of wild foraging, creates powders, and you're helping people with eczema and psoriasis and stuff at the moment, aren't you, with your cleaver powder, I think?
Yeah, absolutely. So after all of this has happened, I've actually met again, moving from Catherine, I started drinking again, and I actually went to a pub one afternoon after moving from there to where I live now. And I brought a pint, and I wheeled my wheelchair up to go towards the pub garden, and I see a lady playing the piano, a Chinese woman, and I just stopped and just listened, and I got talking to this lady, and obviously she questioned while I was in a wheelchair and stuff, and I told her, and we ended up exchanging numbers, and we got talking, and she does Chinese medicine and foraging herself. And because I was in a wheelchair and I couldn't really move too much. She wanted to help me. I don't know what it was, but I don't know why, but I think I caught maybe some of her feelings from telling her what had happened, and she set out to help me. So she explained to me about a herb which grows in the wild. Now I know it grows in the wild, but actually she was growing it in her allotment, called comfrey, which has been used since ancient times and for soldiers
Healing bones and things,
when
right?
they had broken bones and stuff like that, to heal the bone. At first I thought, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, didn't really think anything of it. I'm not really that kind of person. I spent my life, fishing and committing crime and being quite, lost in the world and within myself. So I thought I'd give it a go. I trusted her. And I ended up wrapping my legs in this comfrey for around 8 months. The problem is the surgery went okay and held everything in place, but the problem was my bone wasn't healing and making any growth. So eventually they gave up and took it all out, and they said, look, if the metal, when we take it out and it doesn't hold, we are going to have to amputate your leg.
Yikes.
So that was a bit of a worry, and that kind of made me, say, yes, let's wrap my legs in this comfrey. I don't want to lose my leg. I've got a whole life ahead of me. I'm only 31. That's with my mind in a positive place now, by the way. Yeah, so I'd done that for a few months, and I had a checkup, and they said that my bone growth had gone from like 9% to like 48% or something like that. It was like nearly half like healed, all of my legs and stuff.
Wow.
And my back, the break in my back had healed, but the T12 red fracture was still healing. So I kept doing it, and eventually it just made pretty much a full recovery. Obviously, I live with a lot of pain, but my bone has actually grown back, apart from part in the middle of my left foot where it was so broken they couldn't put anything there at all to fix it. So then I was trying to take steps and stuff and on crutches, and I never wanted to go out. I was still kind of lost in my mind. I was still living with a lot of regret from doing what I did and blaming myself. And a lot of people were telling me, no, you can't blame yourself. You can't live with this regret. You won't ever move on. So I kept listening to Nay, and she kept persisting me to go to the forest. Eventually, she managed to get me to the forest, and it was Christmas Day. And she gave me this book right here, which I can show you. Is the very first foraging book that I ever received. I knew about foraging because she told me about it, but the letter, what she actually wrote me, made me change my life. And from that moment onwards, I read this book and I sat and studied and just wouldn't stop. And with my ADHD and the way I am, I don't know when to stop certain things. And I have quite an addictive personality. So I replaced my addictions with foraging, and now I'm an addicted forager. If anything, I'm addicted to the outdoors and addicted to finding mushrooms and addicted to finding plants and addicted to finding ways and methods to help in my health as well as others. And I get my buzz and dopamine levels up from helping other people now, rather than doing things that I shouldn't do, what damage and hurt myself.
How amazing is that?
Me.
Though you've gone from such a dark past into such a light path of trying to help others, and you look happy, Jack. I have to say, you have a nice light smile on your face that makes me think that actually you're happy doing what you're doing, and that's a really beautiful thing to see. It really is.
Yeah, I would say for the first couple of years on TikTok, I pretended to be okay, and making people happy and helping people got me through my days. It's only recently, in the last few months, and certain periods of times, I've been okay, but I don't think I've actually ever been okay since the moment that it happened, up until a few months ago, when I kind of, my life changed and I had an awakening, and I had a vision of what I wanted to do. And I looked at the bigger picture and I thought, I'm not proud of who I was, but I'm now proud of who I became.
So are we.
And that just changed everything for me. And I've been through a lot of trolling and a lot of rubbish on the internet. But I tell you what, it was all worth it, because it's made me who I am today. And I've never once changed. And they've tried to make out that I'm this and that, but I've never once changed. If you look down my page, and everything that I've done, I've always done it for everyone else and not myself. I've always put everyone else first, even before my own self. But now I have to put myself first, and then put my TikTok following after myself.
Absolutely.
Because it was making me unwell and I had to pretend that I was okay. So yeah, you're right, I am okay now, and I'm happy and I'm content. My mental health is stable, I don't suffer, and yeah, I'm excited, and I just don't know what's around the corner. You know, I'm being approached every day by certain individuals, businesses, and I just don't know where this is going. But I do know it's going very well.
It's a wild ride,
especially this last 2 months, and I would say this last month has literally changed my whole life completely.
I just wanted to compassionately ask, and I mean compassionately ask, a question. With when you said that you had an addictive personality and then you found foraging, and it's been another way for you to, to curb those addictions. When people say that we've got an addictive personality, actually it's something that we use things as a way of coping with what we've been through. And sometimes, when we say we've got an addictive personality, it's like we're blaming and judging ourselves for having been through that stuff. And actually, we've just been trying to cope. And that's the way that you coped. And then this lovely lady came along exactly when you needed someone. And Emma, you can talk about, the key makers, which you will in a second. But, they've unlocked something in you. And then she's presented you with something that you can then channel all of that stuff that you've been through into. You're connecting with nature, you're doing something you love, you're doing something that gives you focus, you're doing something that, your intelligence goes, oh my God, I want to do this. And that's incredible. And can I ask, at any point throughout that time and throughout this foraging, because it seems like there's a change, and I'm just wondering if it's something that I'm thinking it is, and we can talk about this on the channel, it's fine. Was there any point where you took mushrooms in any of this?
As in eating them?
Yes. Is that all right to talk about, Emma?
I may be thinking that you're on about the other kind of mushrooms.
The happy mushrooms.
I'm talking about the good mushrooms. The healing, incredible mushrooms.
So again, no, I haven't taken any of that. And again, the reason being, and I would love to, is because I panic. And I believe that I would panic, if you can understand. With my mental health experiences, I like to feel normal, and sometimes with my panic attacks, I feel like I may have a panic attack and panic. So yeah, I don't like, because of the damage that it's all caused me throughout my life. I'm not saying, I do think mushrooms are absolutely fantastic. And I do believe that they can massively help and change your life, especially people with mental health. But for me, my mind just won't let me.
Then it's probably not right for you.
Using nature and being organic and free, and just having no weight on my shoulders anymore has helped me massively. Being outdoors and getting all of that weight off of my shoulders, and expressing myself and actually talking about things, because my whole life, as you were saying earlier, I've never spoken about things. I've just been
Yeah.
lost, and it's all been inside, and it's just made me get worse, do worse things. And up until later on in life, I've opened up and expressed and cried my eyes out and let it all out. And now I feel I've got the weight lifted off of my shoulders and I feel free.
Actually, this is a good point to maybe talk a little bit about what you do, Katie, because what you just said, Jack's really important, I think. I never knew this, right? But this is something Katie's taught me, that unless we allow these emotions to surface in a physical format, crying, shouting, body shaking, whatever it is, your body doesn't actually get rid of the trauma. So what you did by letting it out like that actually gets rid of the trauma, which is just amazing. It's an amazing thing to do, I think.
Yeah, well, I've recently actually come across a guy on TikTok. I'm not going to go into it too much, but he's very, very interesting. He's actually a psychologist, and he has a PhD. And I've been watching his videos, and something what very caught my eye and was very interested is there's parts of your brain, okay, and there's like a stem in the middle. And basically all your trauma is held in that part of your brain. And if you can learn to relax the top of your brain, you can do certain things to relieve and get rid of that trauma. But I yet still have to speak to this guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, seems a really interesting guy and knows what he's talking about. And again, I think he actually left his profession because he didn't agree with certain things.
Yeah.
And he does it privately now.
Yeah, I have the same thing. Oh, there she comes again. She's popped in again now. Could you hear what we were saying, Katie?
Not very well, I'm sorry.
That's okay, don't worry.
What was the question?
So basically I was saying about the fact that you and I have had sessions where, especially the last one, we did a trauma release session is what Katie likes to call them. And effectively how I see it, what we went through was Katie allowed me or showed me into a space in my own mind where I could be peaceful and calm and quiet. And then we went through the past to allow me to see things and put little Emma, as we call her, into a place of peace and security. And in that space, I could allow little Emma to express how she felt then amongst the trauma that was going on. And then allow adult Emma to guide little Emma into a better place. Now, the point I'm trying to get at here is that what I feel that it's done for me is allowed the stored trauma that you and I were just talking about, Jack, to be released.
Yeah.
And in this last week, I've gone from being, because I have ADHD, the same as you, I've gone from being this crazy, can't sit still for 5 minutes, running around like a chicken with a head cut off, worrying about everything, to a place where I feel like I'm floating on a cloud of candy floss, floating on a cloud of candy floss. Just life is so much simpler.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a massive importance for most people to experience trauma release, and Katie will explain a little bit more about that because my explanation is probably a bit all over the place. And she's the professional.
It was perfect. But it was perfect. And Jack said exactly the right thing, that, your body does store trauma, and your brain and your body are two very separate things, but they are absolutely interconnected. And so your brain can't process the trauma until your nervous system has processed the trauma, until your body has processed the trauma. So when we go through trauma, we are supposed to really release emotions when we go through that. If you think of a child that's gone through something, they tell you everything that's gone on, and then sorry, apologies, my dog's deciding to be an idiot at this moment. So when we go through trauma, you're supposed to release emotions. And if you think about a child that's gone through something, they will tell you everything that they've been through, and then they'll cry and they'll release that stuff. That's our body's chemical way of processing trauma. So Jack, you're quite right. And then what that does when we release those emotions and we're supported in that moment and we're validated, which is really important for the process of actually processing trauma, then when we're validated, our nervous system will drop us out of fight or flight. It will allow us to then put that experience in the past, and our brain isn't constantly being triggered by something that it thinks is in our current environment. So by doing inner child work, by seeing an inner child as a separate person and you as the adult person, allows you to kind of have a conversation between your conscious and your subconscious mind. And it allows you to hear out that child and hear all of, like you just said, you didn't have a voice, you weren't allowed to say things, you didn't get it out. We allow that inner child to have that experience and to do that and have that voice. And then they are validated, and then they release the emotion through you as the adult having the meditative, lovely experience with me. And then we're able to replace those old beliefs that you will believe about yourself from your trauma, like I'm a terrible person, I'm broken, I'm, this or I'm that. And I'm sure you probably have a few of those that have come out of your trauma, Jack. And we can then replace them with new ones, and we can teach our brain that that's now the truth. That's the new core belief. And that's how we process trauma in our body and in our mind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's awesome. I also think that there are certain people on your path, such as Nay, I think you said your friend was called, that are brought into our lives from outside influence.
Yeah,
that you're supposed to meet.
When I decided, after Catherine, what happened, I must have chose this place and area for a reason. And me and Nate definitely crossed paths and bumped into each other that day for a reason. Again, she was just there on a lunch break, drinking a glass of water and playing the piano. So
yeah, she's definitely meant to meet you.
And what do you call them, Emma?
Sorry, key makers.
Tell us why.
I call them key makers because I say that I'm guessing you've watched Matrix, right? And the key maker opens all the doors to the places you need to get to. So I said to Katie that I consider her my key maker. I needed to meet someone to just open the door to show me what was out there. And Nay is your key maker.
She is. She's literally, I'll be honest. I don't think my life would have ever changed if it wasn't for that woman.
Yes, absolutely.
It was a godsend. I needed Nay.
Yeah.
And it's been tough. It's been tough, even during the time. Nay's been there, and she's still there. It's been a tough ride, but I think that's it. I think there's no more rough ride. I think it's just straightforward now.
Yeah, I think we're all in that place.
I just need maybe to carry on with some therapy and just carry on understanding myself, because I don't think I do understand certain things. I just think I need to 100% understand it a bit more. And I think that way then I can help even more people. But I do hope this helps somebody else and stops somebody else, in their tracks and makes them think. And not only that, before, when you mentioned about doing this podcast, I was planning on, going on some podcasts, and I've been offered to go on some podcasts, and I've said no. And I see your page and I see some of your videos, and I felt a connection, and I actually felt to myself, although being on social media and going on another podcaster's thing could be beneficial, but then it could be bad. I felt a connection with you, and that's the reason why I chose to do it with you. And not only that, you actually, by approaching me and bumping into you, made me, after having a conversation of doing this podcast, made me go and reflect the situation, what happened on the bridge. So instead of going back to the bridge where I'd done it, I went to a local one and writ a message. And I never thought anything was going to come from it. And literally 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, I received a message on my TikTok saying, "Did you leave that on the bridge at this certain place? Because that was all I needed to see today. And I basically stopped somebody from doing what I done, and
it makes
they
me want
live
to
in
cry.
my area." And, so all of these things and the connections of people who we're meeting and doing things with, are definitely for a reason.
I
just think whilst you're in that situation, these things don't happen because of the negative energy within your life.
Yes.
And once you try and get out of that, the positive energy starts coming. And that's when the positivity comes into your life and you meet people like yourselves. So
that's a fabulous place to get towards an end with, I think. I'm aware that we've all got other things to do today. I'm sure you guys are busy, but I think that's an amazing place to end. So let's finish with what would be your parting message? What's the message that you want to get out today, Jack, so that I can have that as a little
My message is for anybody who is suffering with mental health and you are being or feeling abandoned, you are not alone. And my channel is there to support you at any time. Just pop in. And I would say the same for you. Anybody else on the screen that you're watching would be there for you too.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I want to dedicate doing this podcast to Catherine Robinson in the remembrance of her life when she was alive.
So lovely. So lovely. Katie, what about you, my darling? What would your parting message today be to Jack or anybody else watching?
I suppose my parting message would be that it doesn't matter how much we've been through, that clearly people like Jack are changing the world for the better, even with all of the stuff that they've been through. And it's taking a zoom out of your life and looking with compassion at what you've been through and how you coped with that, and not judging yourself for that, and then allowing yourself to heal from those things, just like Jack has beautifully described, and leaving it behind so that you can then expand and explore and really experience peace and joy and happiness moving forward and doing everything that you want to do. You deserve it.
It's amazing. Okay, so and with that, we'll end the podcast there. It's been fabulous talking to Jack and Katie today, and I really urge you to go and have a look at their channels and their website, because if you need any help in these kind of areas, these are the guys to talk to. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
It's been
lovely
amazing.
to have met you, Kate, and thank you for having me on.
Meet you, Jack.
And
thank you, Emma.
I'm really looking forward to coming out. Carlos and I are looking forward to coming foraging with you. You can teach us a bit about finding our own food.
I'm so jealous.
It's from my side. Go and give these guys a follow on TikTok, please.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
And show some support.
Let's all help each other.
They're doing amazing things, and yeah, maybe you're going to go on next. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. Anybody else watching who wants to come on and be a guest and has a story to tell, feel free to message us. Drop me a DM. See you later.